Oh, gunshots, and we're in the middle of the city.
There were 27 people shot in Jefferson County since last Wednesday. 8 of them died.
7 murdered in a day and 10 injured.
We're more into being responsive and being reactive than proactive.
But you know, those are strong statements.
I understand, but I'm a part of the community.
We are halfway through the year, and Birmingham, Alabama has had 93 homicides. On July 13, there were 7 murders in a single day. If Birmingham, Alabama continues this trend, it will be the most dangerous city in the world. What on earth is happening in Birmingham, Alabama, and why has this city become so dangerous? This makes the homicide rate in Birmingham, Alabama 5 times higher than Chicago and 10 times higher than Los Angeles. Yeah, Birmingham has less than 200,000 people and it's seen 93 homicides. In comparison, the city of Chicago has over 3 million people and they'll only have 500 homicides in a bad year. That should just give you an idea how bad things are getting in Alabama. And the sister city an hour away of Montgomery isn't doing much better. In 2023, Montgomery had 75 homicides of a population of roughly about 200,000 people as well. With a homicide rate of 37 per 100,000, that means that Montgomery, Alabama is 2 times more deadly than Chicago. What does 7 homicides in one day look like for a city of 200,000 people? To give you a perspective, it would be the equivalent of Chicago having 133 homicides in a single day. That would be the Chicago equivalent, okay? So Chicago having over 3 million people, it would have to have 133 homicides in a single day to be on par with what's happening in Birmingham, Alabama. It would probably take Chicago about 2 months to do what it took in Birmingham, just 1 day of murder. This should just give you an idea how bad things are in the heart of Alabama. And don't think that rural Alabama is faring any better. You are now more likely to be a victim of a homicide anywhere in the state of Alabama than you are in Oakland, California. That's the most dangerous city on the West Coast. Let's compare the violence in Alabama to the violence in the most dangerous place in Mexico. The state of Tamaulipas is on the border with Texas, and it is the most dangerous place in Mexico. In the first 2 months of 2024, they had 79 homicides in the entire state, covering large cities like Reynosa, Matamoros. But of course, there's 3.5 million people in the state of Tamaulipas. That should just give you an idea that the city of Montgomery, with only 200,000 people, killed more people than a state with 3.5 million people did. The most dangerous state in Mexico on the border. Yeah, it's that bad. In the first 2 months of 2024, Tamaulipas had 79 homicides. Now, Montgomery had 75 in an entire year with just 200,000 people. Now, 200,000 times 6, because it's in the first 2 months, and 2 times 6 is 12, means that you are 3 times more likely to be murdered in Montgomery, Alabama, than you are in the state of Tamaulipas, Mexico. The most dangerous state on the border. 3.6 million divided by 3 is 1.2, and 1.2 times 6 is 200,000, which is the population of Montgomery, which means that you are 3 times more likely to be killed in Montgomery, Alabama, than you are to be killed in the state of Tamaulipas, the most dangerous state in Mexico. So next year, when you see the list of the most dangerous cities in the world, it's not going to be Mexican cities that are going to dominate that list. It's going to be good old Alabama. Even scarier than living in Montgomery is living in Montgomery as a Latino. 5 Latinos have been killed in Montgomery this year. That brings the total to an alarming rate because there's only a few thousand Latinos living in Montgomery, Alabama, but they're being targeted disproportionately more than other people. Living in Alabama has become an absolute freaking nightmare. And the prisons in Alabama no longer scare the inmates. The inmates in these prisons have access to full social media lives. Many of them even leave the prison to commit murders on the streets and then come back in, leaving law enforcement with absolutely no idea who is committing many of these murders. Alabama really has become a place of lawlessness, and the homicide rates in these cities is absolutely insane. Now, I lived between Montgomery and Birmingham for 1 year, and it was the scariest time of my lifetime. In a 1 year period, I had to find myself in the middle of 5 gun-related crimes where individuals would point guns at me to try to scare, intimidate, or rob me. It was the most scary time of my lifetime, and I sold my house and got the crap out of there. Since I have left, violence has only escalated in these regions of central Alabama. Going back to 2022, 153 people got killed in the city, and that record is soon to be shattered. I mean, we're halfway through the year and we're already at 93. Why is the city wrapped in so much violence? I lived in this metropolitan area, and I'm going to try to tell you why I think Birmingham, Alabama is dealing with this problem. Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama are the 3 states with the highest homicide rates in the United States. It's been like that for a few years now. Why are these 3 states so embedded in murder, homicide, and crime? To understand why Birmingham and Montgomery have become so dangerous, we have to look at a regional problem, the Deep South. We're going to hop on over to Louisiana to get one piece of the puzzle. Terrence Williams is the brother of the rapper Birdman. He has confessed to killing 40 people. Now, he's been on several podcasts on YouTube explaining his life of crime in Louisiana, and it seems that one of the main reasons why he was able to commit so many homicides is because in Louisiana, law enforcement simply does not care to investigate black-on-black crime. Law enforcement in the state of Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana absolutely do not give a crap about black people being murdered. And in particular, if they're able to send somebody to prison and somebody to the grave, one police officer that I talked to personally in Millbrook, Alabama told me it's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone, because at the end of the day, whether in the grave or in the hole of prison, that is where Alabama wants to see black men. He even went as far as telling me that if you study the laws in Alabama carefully, it's almost like an expressway to death or prison. The state laws of Alabama facilitate homicides, facilitate people getting in armed conflicts. He explained to me that the laws were designed to make sure that if anybody wants to crash out, they can go ahead and do it. This is what a police officer in Alabama told me. He told me, study the laws in Alabama and you'll realize that this state is a expressway to doom for anybody that wants to throw their life away. They facilitate the process. If you want to crash out and throw your life away, we have made it very easy for you. We're giving you weapons, we're giving you ammunition, anything that we can put in your way to make sure that you can crash out like the dummy you want to be. We're going to be there to facilitate that process for you. He told me that Alabama doesn't believe in preventative law enforcement.
We're more into being responsive and being reactive than proactive.
But you know, those are strong statements.
I understand, but I'm a part of the community.
Man, if a wants to kill another in Alabama, why would we prevent that? If anything, we ought to help them. Those are the same exact words that a police officer in Millbrook, Alabama told me. Why would we prevent a black person from killing another black person? That's actually our goal. How can we facilitate this process? And I know that might sound shocking to the rest of you here in this video, but again, you're talking about a city that has a homicide rate 4 times higher than Chicago, and this year it's about to be 5. And the real problem is that there are people willing to jump at the opportunity to hurt another human being if they think they can get away with it. And we don't want to punish you for killing a... Hey, if anything, we ought to reward you. And that's the other part of the process. They're not going to prison to live a miserable life. They're going in there for a reward that they killed a black person. That is what the state of Alabama does. They let them have cell phones, they let them have women, and every once in a while they even let them out to kill somebody as long as the person they are killing is not white. If what I'm saying is shocking to you, then you best stay the crap out of the Deep South, because this is exactly how this region of the country operates. Now, if you look at other regions of the country that have a homicide problem, like Detroit is right on the border with Canada, we know how that plays out. San Diego is on the other side of Tijuana, Mexico. We know how that plays out. You have a large city on the American side. You have a large city on the Mexican side. These are cities along the U.S.-Mexico border that are transit points for migrants and anything illegal, so it would make sense for criminals to fight over these cities. It's understandable how a border city like Tijuana, Mexico, or Detroit, Michigan can have a tremendous homicide problem. It's the transportation point for a lot of criminal activities. But Birmingham, Alabama really doesn't have that problem. Why then are people fighting for this city? A clue can be also taken from Louisiana. The rapper Boosie recently signed a rapper from Alabama. It seemed that as soon as this individual got enough fame and clout off of Boosie, he turned around and bit the hand that fed him. And the issue is that in Alabama, dudes are absolutely petty. It doesn't really have to be a lot of money. There's even a lyric out of Alabama that says you can get killed here for a pair of Jordans. It really doesn't take a lot for somebody in Alabama to want to kill you. It seems that even in the music world, artists are not able to come up out of Alabama because as soon as they get a little bit of fame, somebody comes by and kills them. It's like that old saying, a bucket full of crabs, where everybody's trying to hold you down if you're trying to get up. And that's exactly what happens in Alabama. People here simply do not want to see other people succeed. If you are on the come up, you bet somebody's going to try to take that from you. Dr. Martin Luther King described Alabama as a place full of savages who consider homicide and murder as if it were a pastime of some sort.
And I watched them get brutal.
And that should just open up your minds that this is nothing new. The state of Alabama has been a murderous, hateful place. Interestingly enough, in recent times, both the state of Alabama and the state of Louisiana have made strides to convince other states that they're doing the right thing for their people. I've seen people on social media glorifying the state of Alabama and Louisiana for their great strides with new laws that clearly push a conservative agenda. The reality is, however, that these states are an absolute embarrassment to the United States. Here we are in the year 2024, and cities in the United States are going to be among the most dangerous in the entire planet. If you don't believe my claim that one of the reasons why Alabama is so murderous is because of the racism and the fact that law enforcement, predominantly white, just wants to let African Americans kill each other off as if it were some type of sport, the way Martin Luther King described, well, here's the next part of the chapter. You guys remember that brawl that happened in Montgomery, Alabama? That was just a small taste of the violence, racially motivated violence. In that 1 year that we were living in this metropolitan area, my wife went out to grab dinner for us. When she came back, she looked afraid. I asked her what had happened. She told me that she saw a simple car accident turn into a complete race riot at an intersection in the city that we lived in. Now, I shared this story on social media, and everybody said it was a lie and that these types of things could never happen in the United States. Then while living in Alabama, we continued to see how simple arguments would immediately become race riots, and this became a normal part of living in Alabama. Of course, on social media, nobody believed me. But over the last few years, a few things have happened that everything that I had told you guys about living in Alabama is starting to show true. The fact that simple incidents could turn into race riots was proven true by the videos we saw of the Montgomery Brawl, a story that I had already shared with you guys on the internet, and people said wasn't true, that small little things don't turn into racial brawls in Alabama. This incident proved that my story was true. Many people also claimed that my stories about me being attacked with guns and people trying to rob me because I was Hispanic were all lies and that this would never happen in Alabama. In Montgomery, 3 Hispanics were killed out of robbery targeting a Hispanic store. This neighborhood had already seen countless robberies to the point where even the sheriff of Montgomery County had to come out and say it is true Hispanics are being targeted. In this particular robbery, 3 people innocently lost their lives during a robbery that specifically targeted a Hispanic store in Montgomery. Montgomery's police chief having to admit that the reason these businesses are being targeted is because the owners are Hispanic made national news. Subsequently, the fund that was being raised for the victims' families was also stolen from the same business about a month later. This recently happened in Montgomery, Alabama, and there have already been 2 other Hispanics killed off of the same highway in this region of southern Montgomery. It's beyond any doubt now that living in Montgomery, Alabama as a Latino has become a challenge, as there have been homicides specifically targeting Latinos. And in the Birmingham city, they're also not exempt from the situation. A father of many children was also killed in Birmingham, Alabama, right in front of his house on his way to work. The reason he was targeted was because he was Latino. The reason why these criminals are targeting Latinos is no secret. The chief had to address this question as well, because law enforcement has the reputation of not investigating crimes when the victims are Latinos. Thus, criminals know that they have a free rein. I made this comment while living in Alabama. People said it was a lie. You may remember my story of me trying to report a crime and law enforcement telling me that the resources of the state of Alabama are only to defend the citizens of America and you are an illegal Mexican. Even though I'm a U.S. citizen, I'm not a Mexican, I'm Cuban, and I own my house outright, and I had a gun permit issued by the state of Alabama. None of that mattered. Just like African Americans do not have the opportunity to have their murders investigated, Latinos are even more vulnerable. At least the blacks are from Alabama is the way they look at it. We are outsiders. Thus, if you move to the state of Alabama as an outsider, law enforcement is not going to protect you. You are on your own. This statement was claimed to be a lie, but now we're seeing news reporter in front of the police chiefs of Alabama asking them specifically why so many of these homicides have happened and they haven't been investigated. I think it's very unfortunate, this wave of violence that is happening in Alabama, but I am, however, being proven right that everything that I was telling you guys about this state, the truth is starting to come out. See, they wanted to conceal the truth about the source of the violence in Alabama. The reason why there's so many homicides and violence in Alabama, they've been wanting to hide and conceal the truth. But over the last little bit, crimes and incidents have come to light and made national headlines that are showing the real cause of the problem. Despite the efforts to conceal the real cause of these crimes and murders in Alabama, the world is starting to get to see firsthand the reasons why these crimes are happening. The Montgomery Brawl, the homicides of Latinos in Montgomery and Birmingham, the testimonies of individuals like Terrence Williams that are online telling their stories about how they got away with so many homicides. And of course, the videos that are circulating around the internet showing the lifestyles that people are living within the prison systems in Alabama are opening up a window to the reality of Alabama. See, Alabama has tried to conceal. The secret of Alabama is being revealed. They don't want people to know the real reason these things are happening. They have tried so hard to cover up and conceal why this is happening. They literally tried to kill me for exposing what was happening in Alabama when I lived there. But now, after I left, the Montgomery Brawl, the murders of Latinos that are innocent business owners and customers indiscriminately being killed and them doubling back to steal the fundraiser money for the victims' families, directly showing that in Alabama, everything that I said was true. We were offering the state of Alabama something that it didn't have. We brought our resources to the state of Alabama, investment, knowledge, and news reporting. We brought something to the state that these communities desperately needed, and they tried to kill me for doing it. It's understandable why a tornado will hit Alabama and nobody even covers it. Even covering a simple weather event can be dangerous to news reporters. People in Alabama simply do not want to see other people doing anything that they cannot do. They're envious and they're petty. This is why when we were covering tornadoes, we even got backlash from the community for doing tornado coverage. It was actually dangerous for us to go to small towns in Alabama and report on tornadoes because the locals were threatening us just because we were covering tornadoes. On the contrary, we came to Florida, we covered Hurricane Ian, and to this day, people in the community still meet me in public and remind me that I'm the one that informed them about how their town was doing. And this is the difference between people that want to see you succeed and people that want to see you fail. The people of Alabama do not want to see other people succeed, unless it's from the Union. God is love, but Alabama is hate. And it's not just hate, it's a type of hate that has made their cities and their state among the most undesirable in the entire world, among the most dangerous in the entire world, because the hate that they have in their heart for other people makes them murderous. As long as white law enforcement continues to look the other way, black criminals will take the opportunity to commit crimes if they know they're going to have impunity. And it is this collaboration between law enforcement and criminals and letting them victimize people, as long as the people victimized are the ones that law enforcement wants to be seen victimized, that will continue to perpetrate this crime endlessly in Alabama, to the point that living here today, the large cities in Alabama have become more dangerous than the border towns in Mexico. Among the most dangerous cities in the entire world, this is an embarrassing feat to be known for. The reason why Alabama has become so dangerous is because hate and racism left over from the days of slavery continues to haunt both the white and the black population. The whites bitter that they lost, and the blacks angry that they were slaves. In Alabama, both the whites and the blacks continue to perpetrate their hate on each other, and anybody caught in the middle in the crossfire faces threats from both sides. This is a war that has been raging in the United States for hundreds of years, and the state of Alabama continues to be one of the most undesirable places to live in America and now the entire world. While most cities that are dangerous, like Detroit and St. Louis, you'll see people walking around and enjoying life despite the fact these cities are dangerous, the streets of Birmingham, Alabama are completely vacant as soon as it gets dark. It really is a terrifying place. Some of these victims are as young as 13 years old. There is no heart and compassion in Alabama. Birmingham, Alabama is now on track to being the most dangerous city in the world. If you live in this city or the suburbs or the state of Alabama, you should probably consider taking your family somewhere safer, because this situation has been going on for hundreds of years and there's no end in sight. There's no helping these people. There's no being involved in their problem. If you care about your family, the best thing you can do is get out. Birmingham, Alabama, and the vicinity, central Alabama, one of the most dangerous and undesirable regions to live in the United States, where law enforcement looks the other way and where criminals take advantage of the fact that they know they have impunity. A state where people live in fear secretly. The people of Alabama are paranoid. They're afraid. They're scared, but they're also afraid to speak out and say some of the truths that are haunting them. They know that what's happening in their state is wrong, and they know what's causing these problems. But the people of Alabama are too afraid to speak out. Just like me, anybody that speaks out becomes a target. But today, the events that are happening in Alabama are too big to hide. The crime's too massive, and the entire world is going to be scratching their head wondering why Alabama, and in particular Montgomery and Birmingham, have become so dangerous. And the clues are very clear. The Montgomery brawl and the victimization of Hispanic businesses is just an eye-opening indication of the real reason why this is a dangerous place. And I still can't get over the fact that when I lived in Montgomery, in the city of Millbrook, I tried to press charges on somebody with evidence for a crime that they did against me. And law enforcement told me that I couldn't press charges because I was a Latino. It didn't matter that I had a huge YouTube channel with a huge following. It didn't matter that I was a US citizen. It didn't matter that my wife is American. Law enforcement simply refused to accept my charges. And this is exactly the problem in Alabama, that even if people, blacks, Hispanics, and even whites, try to report a crime, law enforcement doesn't accept the report. In many cases, when people report a crime to law enforcement, those police officers hand the information over to the criminals so the criminals can retaliate on anybody snitching. And this is what that reporter was going at when she was interviewing the police chief of Montgomery, is how the crap do you expect people to come forward if your police officers are the ones turning over the information to the criminals so they can retaliate. And even when people have tried making police reports, they end up finding out that law enforcement lets the criminals know so they can retaliate for you talking to the law. In other words, when minorities like Hispanics, for example, try to report a crime to law enforcement, it ends up actually being even more dangerous for the individual, since law enforcement goes back and tells the criminals this person is trying to report on you. There's a complicitness between law enforcement and criminals within the state of Alabama that scares people from talking to law enforcement. Many times, when somebody finds out that they're victimized, they become an even bigger target. The moment they go to law enforcement and expose to law enforcement that they're afraid, law enforcement lets other criminals know this person's afraid, they just got robbed and they came to us. We're not going to do anything. If you want to go back and double up on the robbery, just like they did with the Montgomery robbery that ended up in those 3 people dead, where they doubled back on the robbery, is exactly what they were going to do to me in Alabama. So it's not just that you get robbed, you get victimized, then you go to law enforcement lets the criminals know, and then they double back and rob you again. This is what they were doing to me in Alabama. This is what they did on the Montgomery robbery. When you go to law enforcement, they come back and double up on you again and rob you a second time to cement the notion that nothing is going to get done by law enforcement. And that is the embarrassment of law enforcement in Alabama, that individuals like myself and the people at that robbery led to 3 deaths in Montgomery. Not only do you get robbed the first time, they double back on you and rob you again to cement the notion in your brain that you have no rights in Alabama simply because of your race. It's an embarrassment to the United States that this situation exists. That's how bold these criminals are in Alabama. They don't just rob you, they double back and rob you again to nail in the notion that in this state, it's the criminals who have control. They did it to the Montgomery victims, they tried to do it to me, and it's exactly how it goes down in Birmingham as well. This is what I hear from people that I've talked to, that once they report the crime to law enforcement, the same people double back and get you again. That is because law enforcement lets them know. That is how scary it is to live in Alabama, that you're not just victimized of a crime one time, they double back and get you again. There's nothing more scary than a police officer telling you that now that you called us and we did nothing, the criminals know that you're a green light. You're a free kill. Anywhere you go in this town, they're going to get you. And honestly, hey, we're not going to do anything about it. Imagine you being victimized by a crime and having law enforcement tell you, hey man, hey, you're a green light now. Hey, I ain't got nothing to do with you. You got to take care of yourself out here. They're going to come back and get you. That is the real situation happening in Alabama. Homicide rates in Birmingham are now on par to be the highest in the world. Maybe a city in Mexico could top it. There's a chance that Reynosa, Matamoros, or maybe even Tijuana could come close to that homicide rate. But at this point, Birmingham, Alabama is a contender for being the most dangerous city in the entire world. 93 homicides halfway through the year. What an embarrassment. What's happening in Birmingham, Alabama really is sad. To the hardworking people in this town, look for a way out.